Have you ever wanted to play the role of a little anime goddess girl who seeks to rule the universe one world at a time? How about doing it in style in a giant rabbit battleship? Or what about taking over the world purely by using your looks and charm? Throw in a bit of perverted humor to top it off and you have Mugen Souls for the PlayStation 3. Developed by Compile Heart, creators of the Hyperdimension Neptunia series, Mugen Souls is an RPG with a lot of charm, color, and challenge, but take my advice, this is not for your casual RPG fan who only plays Final Fantasy. If you go in expecting your typical anime-style RPG, you may be in for a bit of a surprise. The story centers around the goddess Shushu, who plans to take over the universe and claim all 7 planets as her own. Along the way, she meets and assembles a rather cliché group of anime-inspired characters that come along on her world domination spree. It may lack substance, but anyone looking for a lighthearted adventure with plenty of hit-or-miss humor will be right at home with the story of Mugen Souls.
Just how much? Everything?
I could loan you a bikini. Kids and skimpy clothes. You young'uns just don't get it.
At first glance, the game may look a bit simple. You have a hub world that serves as your go-to place to buy and sell items, upgrade equipment, create new characters, and more. The dungeons also consist of relatively linear areas that are littered with tons of enemies on screen to battle till your heart's content. All of these things are a standard recipe for your everyday RPG, but Mugen Souls is far more than you would initially expect. The game makes one thing clear from the get-go. Expect seemingly endless tutorials throughout your adventure to teach you all of the game's nuances in terms of gameplay mechanics, and believe me, there are tons of them to learn. To the game's merit, it does a decent enough job explaining most things, but one in particular, the Moe system, is very poorly explained and almost begs for research outside of the game's tutorial to fully and properly understand how it works. But first, I should probably explain what the Moe system is exactly. Essentially, it's used in and out of combat to persuade enemies to join your side as a peon, which you then use to power up things such as your battleship, or you can turn them into items, or if done incorrectly, make fights much more difficult. You also use Moe to take over entire continents, or basically the dungeons in the game, in order to progress through the adventure. All of this is accomplished by playing a minigame of sorts that involves choosing words that match not only your opponent's Moe, such as hyper, sadist, or ditz, but also using words that match their mood. To help increase your chances of winning over your enemies, you have 7 different outfits, or Moe styles, that you can change into inside and out of combat to greatly aid in your success. Learning which words go with what moods at the start of the game is extremely confusing, and will likely cause a love-or-hate relationship among many gamers that try it out. While you can technically ignore Moe during battles, it's not really advised, since it'll only make things harder on you during the game's ship battles, which are dependent upon how well you do in turning your enemies into peons because they power up your ship, and ignoring this might prove troublesome later on in the game. And if you can believe it, the Moe system is just one of many mechanics the game throws at you over the course of the adventure. Other aspects include a rather in-depth weapon and armor upgrade system and a character creation mode that allows you to train and fuse characters together to create some very interesting builds. Though I personally chose to ignore this feature and use just the story characters exclusively, which worked fine for me. If you have ever played Hyperdimension Neptunia Mark II, you'll feel right at home with the combat in Mugen Souls, because you're able to freely roam around the battlefield within a set movement radius, and if an enemy is in range, you can attack or take action. Turn order is determined by a grid at the top of the screen, so you can have some advanced planning ahead of time, and the battles do contain some very flashy and over-the-top battle animations and attacks, and it actually started out as one of the aspects of the game that was one of the highlights, but this quickly diminished into being just an annoyance as the same animations repeated over and over. Luckily, these animations, including all combat animation entirely, is skippable. However, this often causes hitches and pauses where the game struggles to keep up with what's going on. One of my absolute favorite things to do during combat is utilize the blast-off system, and this allows you to knock your enemies around the battlefield almost like a game of pool, which also plays a big part in positioning your Moe attacks, because you can knock one enemy into another, and they'll bounce into one another, and they'll knock all over the battlefield, and it's always a lot of fun. When it comes to the presentation of Mugen Souls, it actually does a rather good job. There's some really beautiful character portraits that are animated during the talking sequences, and believe me, there's quite a bit of talking sequences in this game. It's a very colorful world, and there's a lot of quirky character and enemy designs. Unfortunately, the frame rate does often take a huge hit, sometimes dipping into the single digits, and I'm not even kidding. And there are some dreadful load times scattered throughout the game that really start to bog down the pacing of the story. The soundtrack is top-notch, and it offers a rather diverse selection of music that fits perfectly with the quirky scenes and over-the-top battles.
I'm giving you a chance to strut your stuff, so you better use it.
Character voice acting is what you would expect from an anime RPG, but I did find that each of the voice actors did do a good enough job representing their characters to the point where I never found the voice acting to be an annoyance, which is sometimes an issue with most RPGs of this type. Believe it or not, there's still so much more to this game when it comes to customization and battle mechanics. RPG fans that are seeking a wealth of content in the form of grinding will also be happy to know that there is an endless dungeon mode that allows you to grind to your heart's content, all the way up to level 9,999, if you feel so inclined to do so. To close out my review, I just want to reinforce one more time, just know what you're getting into before you decide to give Mugen Souls a try. Fans of games like Disgaea, Trinity Universe, the Atelier series, Hyperdimension Neptunia, and basically any compile-hard, NIS, or Gus-developed game will feel right at home with what Mugen Souls has to offer. If you're more of a casual RPG fan, or if you've only slightly delved into the Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest series, you might want to look a bit more into whether or not Mugen Souls would be for you. And as always guys, thanks so much for your support and your comments, and thanks a lot for watching.
This feels so good. My skin always gets so nice and smooth. Washing with a shampoo is the best. This one's shrunk a lot. I'll have to make a new peon soon. Shoo-shoo! Oh, shoo-shoo! Here you are. What are you doing? Isn't it obvious? Come on, join me. Really? Well, I suppose it makes sense. Of course it does. Come on, Altis. Rip those clothes off and get in here with me. It feels like I'm being roped into this situation. But okay, allow me to join you. I'll wash up out here before getting into the screen. Do you have a shampoo I can use?